Hey there, and welcome back to the PHNX Suns player previews. My name is Lindsay Smith, and that's Espo.
Ahoy, hoy. I love that I have one name on this network.
I always feel bad because I'm like, I say first and last names for everybody else, but it's just Espo. But is that, like, you cool with that?
Most people don't know any other name that I have, so it's fine.
All right, because I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I should say both of his names.
Just call me Espo. It's fine. We'll have two of them.
Espo. Well, today, Espo, we are going to be discussing Landry Shamet, a new face on this Phoenix Suns team. And how did he get here? Well,
he was traded here, but this is going to be his fourth team in, I believe, 5 seasons here, or excuse me, 4 seasons. And the poor guy, his draft pick was traded before he ever was actually picked. So this pick went all over the place. And actually, a fun fact, it was packaged with Dario Saric in a trade for Elfrid Payton at one point.
Go figure.
So two current teammates of his were actually part of a trade that moved that draft pick back in June of 2014. So I thought that was a little interesting fact about how he got here. But he played for the Clippers and Philly, and obviously with Brooklyn last year. Got to know Coach Monty Williams in Philly, and they had a good relationship, which I think is a big part of why that was one of the people that James Jones and Monty Williams had circled to try to bring in and help bolster the bench a little bit. That relationship we've seen, relationships in general with Monty Williams are so key, and that trust that they have. And Monty got the firsthand knowledge of how this guy plays, how he carries himself, what he can bring to a team. And that excites me because Monty was probably looking at him as an undervalued asset elsewhere. I've heard a lot of talk of, well, he's a three-point shooter. That's basically what you're getting out of Landry Shamet. But then in preseason, we see ball handling and those kind of things that come out. So that experience with Monty in Philly is a big deal and a big reason why he's here. And Suns sent out the 29th pick in Javon Carter to Brooklyn on draft night for Landry Shamet. And as much as I love Javon, that's good value.
I think so too. I think it'll pay high dividends for this team this upcoming season. And, it's interesting that you kind of bring up the relationship with him and Monty, because at training camp, Monty said this was a guy they had been targeting and trying to get for the last few years.
Yeah.
So he's been wanting Landry on his team for a while now, and that's got to feel good as a player to hear that your coach and your GM wanted you, not just for this season, but even prior to this season. And they did what they could to bring you in.
Certainly. I mean, that gives you an extra level of confidence because when you know you were wanted, you're not in the back of your head questioning, am I going to get minutes? How is this going to work?
What am I going to do? How am I going to contribute? What role?
You go, I can just go in and be me. I can do the little things that I've always done that Monty noticed in Philly and make an impact on this roster with a team that has championship aspirations. That's got to feel very comforting. The other thing I like about it too, and what you're saying, is it also shows how much Monty Williams and James Jones are on the same page, because obviously Monty has a say in what's going on, and being able to work in concert to get a guy like Landry on the roster speaks volumes as well.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's take a look at last year's stats. How did he perform, Espo?
Yeah, 23 minutes a game he averaged and had a 9.3 points, 1.8 rebounds, 1.6 assists, and about a half a steal a game with the Nets. And I think you'll probably see him score more points this year in a Suns lineup, just based on the offense and the role that I think he'll wind up playing on that second unit. But this is the kind of guy you want on your bench, a guy that can come in, hit some shots, play good defense, potentially ball handle a little bit in that 0.5 offense. The Suns were not looking for star power this offseason, which sounds weird because everybody wants more stars, but I feel Monty Williams and James Jones understood a guy like Landry can come in and play the role that both E'Twaun Moore and Langston Galloway played at times, but play it more efficiently and get more consistent minutes in that second unit as well. And in the preseason, we saw him step up into the starting lineup with Devin Booker out due to the COVID situation that he faced. So there's versatility there. He could be a guy, if you needed for a few games, that could plug a hole in that starting lineup as well and add some scoring.
Well, you mentioned minutes, so let's talk a little over-under. Number of minutes he plays in a game, 14 and a half. Are you taking the over or the under?
I'm going to take the slight under. I think he's probably around 14 minutes a game.
I think I'm going to go over.
And so you think that's because he has a large impact, or because the injuries? What are you thinking? Do you think
I think it's because
important?
the multiple different ways that they can utilize him.
Okay.
So that's what I'm going to go with, because he has spoken recently saying that, he's going to do whatever this team needs him to do, whether that's off the ball or in a more ball dominant way. And he said he feels like he can play both of those positions well. And it's something that he wants to be able to do here and wants to show more in Phoenix, because he doesn't think he's had the opportunity throughout his career to really show everything that he has to offer. And if I was a betting person, since we're talking over under, I am. It seems as if I'm going to take the over, because I think Monty is in support of that. Monty has said, he wants him to handle the ball more and be a playmaker on this team to take some pressure off of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and Cam Payne. So if Chris Paul does take a little bit more rest, and maybe you see Landry Shamet kind of fill both roles in some capacity. And I think Chris has even come out and said that he wants to have, wants to dabble a few, or test out, play with some lineups where they're all on the floor at the same time.
That
I'm
would
take
be
the
interesting.
over.
I mean, yeah, you could even, not that I want to see a lot of experimentation, but you could see Book slide to the 3 in some of those lineups too. He's got the size, he's got the skill, and if Landry becomes a true offensive weapon, the more you have out there guys that can do multiple things, the better off you're going to be. You hear a lot about positionless basketball. Well, I think that's more what they're talking about, is that you can have guys like that can go out there and you don't know who's going to bring up the ball or who's going to handle it or who's going to be where. It makes things more dynamic.
Right, exactly. All right, so let's hear from our anonymous scout. So his strengths, he's a good defensive guard and a guard that can really shoot the ball. So we know those two things about Landry Shamet. Those are two great things to have in your bag. Some of the weaknesses, however, are consistency, and that although he is a good defender, he does get targeted a lot. So with that, the question this anonymous scout had is, will he see time in the playoffs? We'll see more time in the regular season, but will he see as much time in the playoffs? And for me, I'm like, I want to say yes, because I don't think James Jones and Monty Williams would bring in a guy that they know ahead of time won't see any minutes in the playoffs, but I guess you don't know.
I had a former front office member pose the same question where I asked about Landry Shamet. He seems like a guy that likely falls out of your rotation come playoff time, but the inconsistency to me could very much be what we were talking about, not feeling wanted in places.
And not having the opportunity to really show everything that you can bring to a team, but being asked to do very specific, limited things.
Yeah, and to me, if you're a good defender, but you get targeted defensively, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because you have the skill set to step up to that challenge. And this Suns team is more about the team defense than it is the individual defense, which to me doesn't make that as much of a concern. His teammates will help pick him up even in those situations. But we did see in the playoffs a lot of pick and rolls where teams, including the Suns did this a lot, they try to set up the matchup that they want. We'll have to watch that this year, because if he is a matchup liability, then yes, that would be the case. He'll sit in the playoffs.
Any last thoughts on Landry Shamet before we go?
One of the guys I'm most excited to watch. Look,
Yes.
He and JaVale in the preseason showed a lot. I think they're both going to be exciting in this second unit, and I think he's one of the guys, along with Cam Johnson, that has a lot of room for growth in this year that could surprise a lot of people. Where they could, both of those guys, but in particular Landry, could show something that you haven't seen in the beginning of their career.
And I hope he does. I hope we are all pleasantly surprised with what Landry Shamet shows us this year. Thanks for tuning in to our PHNX Suns player preview. We'll see you next time.